Okay, so let's dive into one of the most fascinating encounters in all of literature. And this isn't your typical crime story. This is a pure, unadulterated battle of wits between two absolutely brilliant minds. It's the story of the one time Sherlock Holmes was well and truly beaten. You know, this single sentence, which is literally the opening line of the story, it tells you everything you need to know right up front. This was never about love or romance. For a guy as famously logical as Holmes, this was all about a level of intellectual respect he had for no one else. This was about a woman who proved to be his absolute equal. So our story kicks off not with a murder, but with a frantic king and a pretty major royal scandal. But honestly, the scandal itself is just the stage for a truly unique opponent to make her grand entrance.
Right, so the King of Bohemia practically bursts into Baker Street, totally desperate. He describes Irene Adler as this formidable adversary, an adventuress who has consistently outsmarted his very best agents. He's tried everything: theft, illegal searches. He spent a fortune, and all of it has failed.
And this, right here, is what really matters. Holmes doesn't take the case for the royal fee or for the prestige. No, he takes it for the sheer intellectual challenge that Irene Adler represents. He is completely intrigued by the mind that could so thoroughly outplay a king.
So this is where the duel really begins. We get to see how Holmes starts his strategic analysis of his target. He doesn't just sit around and theorize, he gets out there and observes.
Instead of jumping to conclusions, we see Holmes's genius, which lies in pure, unadulterated information gathering. He spends a whole day just listening and watching, meticulously building a profile of his opponent from the ground up, learning her patterns, her friends, and her character. And then, something happens that is just completely unexpected. While he's tailing her, Holmes is literally pulled off the street to act as a witness for her spontaneous wedding. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This one event changes the entire dynamic of the case and forces Holmes to completely reevaluate her motives.
And this leads Holmes to a key insight. He realizes that now that she's married, Irene Adler doesn't really need the photo to blackmail the king anymore. She's moving on with her life. Now the photo is about protecting herself from the king, to make sure he never interferes in her new life.
So, believing he now understands her psychology, Holmes shifts gears from observation to action. He comes up with this elaborate, almost theatrical plan that's designed to force her hand and make her reveal her secret.
The entire plan is built on this one single, powerful psychological principle. Holmes figures that in a moment of pure panic, a person's first instinct is always to run and protect their single most precious possession, and he is about to create that panic.
And here we just see Holmes's mastery of manipulation in full swing. He stages a street fight, gets himself carried into her house as a wounded priest, and then has a smoke bomb tossed in. And just as he predicted, in the chaos, Irene Adler makes a single split-second move towards a hidden panel and reveals everything.
Holmes leaves the house with that quiet satisfaction of a chess grandmaster who's just pulled off the perfect checkmate. He knows where the photograph is. The game, as far as he's concerned, is over. All that's left is to come back the next morning and collect his prize.
But oh, the game was far from over. The master strategist was about to learn that his opponent saw his checkmate coming and had prepared a devastating countermove of her own.
So the next morning, when Holmes returns with the king and Dr. Watson to triumphantly claim the photograph, he's met with a stunning, and I mean absolute, reversal of fortune.
Everything is gone. Irene and her new husband have vanished overnight. But in that secret hiding spot, she's left two things: a portrait of just herself and a letter addressed to him. She didn't just anticipate his move, she prepared a counter-move that left him completely and utterly outplayed.
And in her letter, she reveals everything. She explains that she was suspicious of the conveniently injured clergyman from the very start. And after the whole fire alarm stunt, she put on her own disguise, followed him home, and confirmed that she'd been visited by the one and only Sherlock Holmes. She saw right through his entire charade.
And in that moment of defeat, Holmes discovered something way more valuable than a photograph or a royal fee. He found a deep and lasting admiration for the woman who had bested him.
This part really reveals the true outcome. When the king offers him any reward he wants, an emerald ring, a title, you name it, Holmes turns it all down. He asks for only one thing: the photograph of Irene Adler that she had left behind. It was a trophy, not of victory, but of profound respect.
You see, for Sherlock Holmes, a man who absolutely thrived on intellectual puzzles, being so completely outwitted by Irene Adler wasn't really a failure. It was this rare, unforgettable experience of a brilliant mind finally meeting its match, and it was a memory he would treasure forever.
All right, today we're jumping into one of Sherlock Holmes's most famous cases. But here's the thing, it's not really about a crime, it's about this incredible intellectual duel, one that honestly changed everything for him.
You hear this line all the time, right? To Sherlock Holmes, she was always the woman. But it's so easy to get it wrong. This isn't some love story. No, this is about respect, a kind of deep, profound respect that you can only have for someone who has absolutely, masterfully beaten you at your own game.
Okay, so let's get into the setup. Holmes wakes up this day feeling pretty great. In his mind, the case is basically closed. All that's left is the final move, like a checkmate in chess. But here's the catch.
The problem is, his confidence is sky high. He'd already figured out exactly where the photograph was hidden with this ingenious little trick. He's at the absolute peak of his game. And you know what that means, right? It's the perfect setup for a massive, humbling fall.
And his plan, wow, it was brilliant. You've got to give him that. He wasn't just going to search the place. No, that's too simple. This was a psychological trap. He fakes a fire alarm, right? Fire! Because he knows, in that moment of panic, a person's first instinct is to look toward their most valuable possession. He wasn't looking for the photo. He was making her show him where it was.
Okay, so the stage is set. Holmes and the King of Bohemia roll up to Briny Lodge. Holmes is thinking, this will be over in an hour. We'll grab the photo, bury the scandal, done deal. But they don't find Irene Adler waiting for them. Instead, a servant comes out and just calmly drops this bombshell that shatters Holmes's whole plan. My mistress left this morning, and not just for a walk. She's gone, left England entirely. So, okay, that's a setback for sure. But Holmes thinks all is not lost. Even if she's gone, he knows exactly where the photo is. He saw her look right at that hidden compartment. So he heads straight for it, thinking he can at least salvage the mission, grab the evidence, and still walk away with a win.
And here we go. He gets to the hiding spot. He opens a little compartment, and sure enough, there's a photograph inside, just like he knew there would be. But wait, it's not the one he was looking for. And along with it is something else, something that flips this entire case on its head.
So, what's inside? Not the incriminating picture of her and the king. Nope, it's a photo of Irene Adler, all by herself. And a letter, addressed to Sherlock Holmes. This isn't just a failure to find the evidence. This is a direct message from his opponent. A checkmate.
I mean, think about how fast this all happened. He left Baker Street that morning absolutely sure of himself. He arrives, finds out she's gone, and then he finds this letter. And just like that, his perfect plan is in ashes. It all collapsed in a matter of minutes. This is the real kicker, isn't it? The whole time Holmes was watching her, she was watching him. The master of disguise was seen through. The hunter became the hunted. For maybe the first time in his career, Holmes had to face the fact that someone had seen his plan, understood it, and beat him to the punch.
So the big question is, how? How did she do it? Well, that letter he found explains everything, and it reveals a mind that was, incredibly, one step ahead of him the entire time. This is my favorite part. It was a duel of disguises. Holmes put on a costume to get into her house and spy on her. So what did she do? She put on her own disguise, followed him all the way back to Baker Street to confirm who he was, and even wished him good night as she passed by. He had no idea. The master of the game was beaten by someone who played it just as well, if not better. And her letter also makes one thing crystal clear. She was never going to blackmail the king. That wasn't her game. She just wanted insurance. She had a new husband, a new life, and she was just going to use that photo to protect herself. If the king ever tried to mess with her, it was a shield, not a sword. So this whole thing forces both the king and Holmes to completely rethink who this woman is. She wasn't some obstacle. She was a player in the game. And watching how they each react to this fact, well, it tells you everything you need to know about them. The king is just stunned, annoyed, maybe a little impressed, but mostly just relieved the scandal is contained. But Holmes, he's not mad, not at all. He's genuinely, deeply impressed. You can almost feel his admiration for the brilliant mind that just took him apart. And this really gets to the heart of what was at stake for each of them. For the king, it was all about avoiding a political scandal, public disgrace. But for Holmes,
It was never about that. It was an intellectual battle. For him, losing meant being outsmarted, and that's exactly what happened.
Think about it. In all of his adventures, how many people really outsmarted Sherlock Holmes? Not beat him in a fight, not got away by dumb luck, but actually outthought him. The list is very, very short. She didn't win by accident. She won with pure intellect. She read him like a book.
But here's why Holmes's respect runs so deep. It wasn't just that she was clever, it's that she had incredible character. She could have destroyed the king. Instead, she used her leverage to protect herself and then just walked away. Her victory wasn't about destruction, it was about preservation. And that combination of brains and integrity is what floored him. So at the end, the king is thrilled and offers Holmes this priceless emerald ring as payment. But Holmes turns it down. He says, "No, I want something else." And what does he ask for? The photograph of Irene. Not as a romantic keepsake, get that out of your head. He wants it as a trophy, a reminder of the one time he was truly beaten.
You know, most people would be embarrassed by a defeat like that. They'd want to forget it, but not Holmes. He puts that photograph on his mantelpiece. He studies his defeat. He learns from it. And in a way, that's what makes him so great.
So, in the end, this story isn't really about a scandal or a king. It's about that incredible moment when one brilliant mind meets its equal. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Maybe the most profound victory isn't about winning at all. Maybe it's about being so completely and wonderfully outmaneuvered that you're forced to see the world in a whole new way.